Hi everyone, and welcome to yet another Western Region training. This one designed specifically for our newest BPAs, those hired in the last 7, 8, 9 months or so and newer. And this training today is going to be on setting better discovery calls, how suspect management can be the key to your success. And in today's training, I actually brought in a panel of phenomenal experts from around the Western region. So I'd like to introduce those folks to you today. First up is Laura Noll. Laura has been a BPA with Insperity since 2008 in our LA4 office. She is a perennial Chairman's Club member, elite BPA status in the past, one of the very few in the company that's reached that high level. And she is currently a member of the $6 Million Club. So Laura, thank you for joining us today and offering your expertise.
Thank you.
We also have Sarah Hogan joining us from the Denver market. Sarah joined Insperity back in 2009. She's been in Denver 1 ever since. Again, another multiple Chairman's Club recipient, as well as a member of the $4 Million Club. So welcome, Sarah. Appreciate you helping us out today.
Excited too.
Awesome. And then we finally have Felix Chaparro. Felix, the newest member of our panel, but very, very well deserved to be here. BPA since 2018 and based in the San Francisco 3 office. Felix, in his first full calendar year, qualified for TRIP, joined us down in Mexico, and is also currently a member of the $1 Million Club. So welcome, Felix.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Sarah.
Sure. All right. So, putting this panel together, I kind of did it very intentionally because I wanted there to be wide representation to give each of you listening kind of a bunch of different ways to do things and to be successful. So picking a different BPA from each region, and then Felix, Sarah, and Laura all have very different styles of how they approach their business. But the thing that they have in common is they've all been very, very successful during their tenure here. So I know this is going to be a great hour for us to spend together and learn from them. Now, I want today's presentation to be interactive. So while you're on mute, you do have the ability to enter comments. And please, if you have questions for the panel, I do have some prepared questions, and we're certainly going to get into a lot of things I think you're interested in. But if there are questions that you have that we haven't addressed, just type them into the chat, and we do have some time at the end that we'll set aside and answer those for you as well. All righty, and with that, here we go. So, so the very first thing, I guess, when you think about prospecting and knowing that the folks on the phone today are all, generally speaking, under a year of tenure, they're all kind of sitting down every day trying to decide who they should prospect, who they should call on. So for the panel, and Laura, maybe we'll start with you, just how do you go about identifying the businesses that you want to target as you're making your own prospecting list?
So I generally like companies that are a little newer and don't have systems in place. When I started a jillion years ago, we were originally selling against the status quo. Now we're selling against the status quo, competition, and uncertainty. So if companies are newer, they'll have less bureaucracy in place. It's usually easier to make a unilateral decision. So younger companies, it's kind of changing who to call on now, but like an essential business or something that's of use, digital companies, streaming companies, cleaning product companies, toilet paper companies, and then always the CEO.
All right. All right. Sarah, Felix, do you want to go next, one of you?
Go ahead, Sarah. Sure. Similar to Laura, I'm going to take a look at businesses that on the outside look like they have money, because you need money to be able to pay for what we do, and those tend to invest in their employees, and they're driving revenue through their people. So I'll look in, obviously now things have changed. We're not out and about as much, but where are they located? Know your town, know your area, where those Class A spaces are. For us here in Denver, it's downtown, the Tech Center corridor, Boulder. So I'll get a feel, are they on the very outskirts of town, or maybe they're in a strip mall, or are they paying for, nice space for their employees. So I'll start there. Obviously, type of business, similar to Laura. Are they in the news? What do they do, right? We have industries that we have great success with and others that we don't, and others that we don't even do business with. So I'll start to, you know, peel them off if they fall into that gray range. And lastly, I'm looking for employee count. What do they have on LinkedIn? What's their LinkedIn presence like? Do they have more than 15 or 20 people currently employed there? That's where I start to try and get the best target list. And then similar to Laura, I'm going to start with the CEO. All day, every day, I'm going to try and get on his or her calendar. That's where I start when I'm starting to look at different companies to prospect to.
Okay, great, thanks. Felix, how about you? Anything different?
A couple of things, not too much. It's pretty much along the same vein. Look at LinkedIn, look up organizations, see what their current employee count is, how long they've been in business. Sometimes that will also give you an indication of like what level of funding they're at. Are they Series A? Are they Series B? If they've been at Series A for 15 years, probably not the best fit because nobody else believes in them. But one of the things that I do, and Sarah kind of already alluded to this, understanding who historically Insperity has done well with and who we don't do well with. On our 10K, and I think in Sales Coach, we do have a flyer that gives that breakdown to the percentage of what our client base actually is. So really understanding what that client base is consistent of, how many nonprofits, do we do staffing? Do we do anything in those other realms that should give you an idea of like, okay, I'm going to prospect this, a construction company. Oh, they might have needs. Yeah, but do we really work well with them? Or painters or roofers? Probably not. So while you can get a good DC with at least a workers' comp conversation, are they going to be the best fit moving forward? Unlike Sarah and Laura, I normally don't target CEOs. And it really depends on client size. If they're 5, yes, CEO. If they're 10, yes, CEO. The minute they get into the 20, 30, 40, I tend to stay away from CEO and target people that may be closer to the pain. So COO, if they have a good size group, maybe VP of HR. And it gives me a sense that, yes, while the CEO will eventually be in the room, I can start here. I can get a good argumentative standpoint to elaborate and to develop a more robust argument when I go to the CEO. But I've had a lot of success with COO, Chief of People, VP of HR, things like that.
Okay, great. So, you know, one of the things that we sort of noticed and was the catalyst for this training was that, first of all, it's tough to set discovery calls, right? I think we'll all agree right now in this environment, it's really tough to set discovery calls. So there's nothing more heartbreaking than reaching out to a prospect or a suspect 7, 8, 9, 10 times, finally getting that discovery call set, and then it's just a lousy fit. Like you never should have even called them the first time. So what are some of the red flags that you guys would see that would knock a business out of contention, like that you wouldn't even call them if you saw some of those things? Or maybe a better way to phrase the question is, what are some of the things you've seen newer folks do in the types of businesses that they're calling where you're like, why are you calling that business? Maybe some things.
I love red flags. So first is always just like a quick check on LinkedIn. Like if they say they have 11 to 50 people, but they only have 2, I definitely wouldn't call. Honestly, if they've been around since like anything probably in the 1900s, but especially a company that's 60 or 70 years old, I wouldn't call. Unlike Felix, unless they have 100 employees and they're with a PEO, I shy away from the HR director. Nothing with chemicals, nothing where anybody is on a roof. Those are all big workers' comp red flags for me. I really, really like the CEO, and for me, that's kind of my one and only, unless it's a CFO who can sign, or a CFO and they're with another PEO, because then they're not sold on the co-employment contract. Definitely no staffing, like Felix said. I don't like nonprofits because they have boards, and boards can lead to nepotism or opinions of people who you never get to meet. And I don't like banks or law firms or doctor's office, anywhere where the
Or
one
architects.
person, you don't want one person to be the prima donna. You want an equitable company where each employee is valuable and they want to take care of them through better benefits or training courses.
All right. Any other thoughts on that? Things that you've seen people, like common mistakes, the don'ts, to sort of tell people to stay away from?
Website. I think website is sometimes an indication, and I try not to judge a book by its cover, but sometimes it's warranted. Where if you look, a simple website pull, you see it. If they're using one of the, and I can't even think of the website companies, if it still says like Wix at the bottom, you're like, okay, maybe they just put something together. There's not a lot of funding there. But that's kind of led me in directions of maybe stay away from this. There might be a red flag. Glassdoor reviews, if people are saying some pretty intense stuff that may not be good, might be a red flag that shows they might not have the right mindset to have a people-centric point of view of their organization, or even Yelp reviews too. Anything where there's some feedback from the community on where this organization is. It could be a good sign if they're okay and they say, oh, this is a good company, but not a fit. But if it's like, this is horrible, they don't care about us, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you may think it's a good fit, and then you reach out and they're like, why are you calling me? I don't care about benefits. I don't care about this or the other.
So go ahead, Sarah, sorry.
I was just gonna, since I threw out architecture firms there, I was gonna answer Colleen's question.
That's what I was going to ask you to answer.
I think, it sounds like a large list of businesses. I think if you take it one step farther and look at the structure of the business, that's why it's hard. To Laura's point, nonprofits are tough, I think, for two main reasons. One, they have a board, which is a lot of decision makers. Two, they are running some type of budget differently than businesses, for profit, where they're either getting grants or funding. And just as a long-term play, how much work you put in. Granted, we have great nonprofit clients, but as an overarching, like, I'm going to hit a nonprofit list, I probably wouldn't spend my time there. Similarly to law firms, medical offices, CPA firms, and architecture firms, they're partnerships. So they have a lot of partners who all make the decision, which is usually a non-decision, I find. So that's why I jokingly threw out architecture firms. But we have, again, some great architecture firms. I have some great medical practices because their needs are so much greater and it's such a hot mess versus these decision makers. But I can tell you those doctor offices I have, they have one or two main partners, and they are the decision makers. So I've just found law firms, medical practices, architecture firms, CPAs, when you start to get into that, it's how the business is structured, it's how they make those decisions. And it just, you're so excited and you get in, we're jumping ahead of, right, where we're just prospecting, but the decision process is just grueling. So that's why I threw that out there. Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, the only thing I would say in kind of identifying the businesses that you want to target, I think that, there's certainly some different schools of thought in going after particular vertical markets or what have you. I can tell you that a lot of the successful BPAs that I've seen over the years tend to prospect geographically rather than necessarily in verticals. And so to Sarah's earlier point, that if you know that, a particular area of town is a higher rent district and more successful, kind of better companies tend to stay in those types of Class A buildings and desirable areas. If you prospect geographically and you say, okay, I'm going to target this particular area, and you target all the businesses in those areas, you're going to find that you're going to have kind of a better quality prospect versus in maybe a lower rent, more depressed area where even the law firm is not going to be a top shelf law firm, or even the doctor's office is not going to necessarily have the right mindset. I know when I was a BPA out here in LA, Orange County, there's Pacific Coast Highway, which goes directly up the coast, an ocean view, the entire length of Pacific Coast Highway. And so when I would decide to go out and canvas, I would drive to Pacific Coast Highway and I would literally hit every office park along that road, because I felt like there's a value, right, in those businesses. They're in high rent buildings, which means they have money. To Sarah's point, you need to have money to pay for Insperity. And then the other thing that I think a business that's in that Class A top office space is that they have a value to the intangible. Meaning that being in a nice place, the presence that they put out, the way that their employees feel, the types of employees and clients they want to attract is all around the image that they're projecting. And valuing the intangible is another thing that makes someone a very good fit for Insperity, because they have to see value, not just in the nuts and bolts of our technology or whatever, but they have to really value that premier service offering that we have. So that was always my philosophy as a BPA as well. But I would just say, don't get so hung up on, a particular industry, because you can have, and I'm sure you guys have experienced it, right? Two, technology companies sitting next to each other. One's a perfect fit for us. One's never going to do business with us based on the mindset of the owner. And, that's tougher to understand before you actually get in and meet with them. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the 5-star appointment, right? We've talked about this in other trainings, and this is definitely the goal, which is to set a quality appointment each and every time. And so, looking at a 5-star appointment, just as a reminder, 5 stars, the first one is the company is of the right size. So we're targeting companies with 25 or more employees. Meeting with the business owner or the appropriate C-level executive based on the size of the company. Looking that the company currently offers benefits. They're in an industry that we can work with, and they know this is a sales call. So they're not meeting with you because they're trying to develop a COI relationship or something like that. They actually know that you're going to be sitting down and talking to them about their business and how Insperity might be able to help. So Sarah, Felix, Laura, I'd love to get some of your thoughts on, as you're prospecting companies, how do you ensure that you're setting a 5-star appointment as often as possible? Who'd like to begin?
I assume every call I set is 5-star, and I assume every call I go on, I'm going to get a census, because why would somebody waste my time or their time? Sarah said earlier about reading about companies or press releases on companies. I think that's really important. If they have a change in the business, they're going to be more willing to make a change to Insperity. And we should all be reading anyways right now because of the economic climate. And while you're reading, you're gaining information to talk about and sound knowledgeable with your prospects, and you can pick up company names. So if they're staying current and they're in the news, they're probably a good place to start. And then, is their culture great? Like you said, they value the intangible. Are they like-minded like Insperity? Do they have work-life balance? Are they employee-centric? Do they have a getting better agenda? Do they believe in outsourcing?
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but when you're deciding who to prospect, can you give an example of like a way that you would know that before you've even met them? Do they have that work-life balance or that right mentality or right mindset?
You could sometimes pick up things on the website, like or their LinkedIn. Like Felix said, do they have lousy Glassdoor reviews? Sometimes on the website, they like, do you meet the team? And then do they have funny blurbs about people? Would it be like, like, do they have a picture with their dog? Or, for example, or do they give themselves a silly title? Those are usually good indications that they have a really good culture.
That's a great example. Yeah. And then I always like to look at their hiring page too, because their hiring page, they often talk about the benefits they have in place. They tend to talk, like the right company will tend to talk a little bit about culture or work-life balance or some of the different things that they offer. And I think to your point that when they're offering some different unique things or some personal things, it definitely speaks to the culture of the company as well.
Yeah.
Any other ideas or thoughts on that, on how to set a 5-star?
I mean, I usually go through, you know, simple things like the employee count. It's not going to be exact, but I checked LinkedIn. Like, check that, you know, if it's a good company and they have hired good people, these people are going to have LinkedIn profiles, right? It's 2020. They're going to have LinkedIn profiles. So it should be in the ballpark of are they 5 employees or are they 80 current employees, give or take, right? And then I'm always finding the contact information for the CEO, CFO. You know, I'll start there until, I'm sure we'll talk about this, they maybe want to push you off. Some companies, I think it's hard unless you're having a conversation, you're picking up the phone and talking to them to figure out if they have benefits. Some tech companies, you know, in order to attract talent, brand their benefits. Those are great companies. You can see exactly what they're doing and you know they have to attract the best talent. So if you, takes 2 seconds, check their website. To Laura's point, are they showing their dogs? What does Sarah like to do on the weekend? You know, they put some time into it and they're obviously refreshing those profiles or wanting to keep those people because they put those profiles on their website as part of their brand. At this point, we do have SIC codes. You guys will learn what's a good, whether it's the hard way or the not hard way, right? If you get declined through workers' comp, or you just check that off before you start prospecting. And in my prospecting, you know, I used to be a little more high level early on, like, let's get coffee, we can network. Now I just do like, look, I want to talk to you about your benefit strategy, your outsourced HR strategy for 2021. I think we're in a climate that it actually makes it easier to have a direct business conversation. Like, how are you handling this and how are you looking forward? Like, just throw it out there because everybody has to figure this out. So those are my like quick down and dirty. I'm not reading everything about this company. I'm just like, bam, bam, bam. They fit the ballpark, 3 of 5, 5 of 5, let's go for it. So that's what I do when I'm like cold, you know, putting a new kind of cold list together or just trying to put some new companies into my pipeline.
Gotcha. Felix, anything different for you?
No, I think to Sarah's point and Laura's point, clarity is probably, and communication is probably your best friend in this process. Because when I started here, I was told, hey, less is more. They don't need to know exactly what you're going to talk about in this meeting. And I went about that and I set DCs. I'm like, oh, you know, we're going to talk about stuff. Let's just talk about stuff. And I was a recruiter in a past life. And I set a DC with a CFO and I said, yeah, let's just talk about stuff, see how things are going. And I want to find out more about you. And I had the call and he's like, okay, so what opportunities do you have? I'm looking. Do you need my resume? I'm like, no. I want to know more about your business. He's like, oh, I'm looking to get out of here. I thought you were a recruiter. I was like, oh, okay. So now I just ask, much like Sarah said, this is what we're going to be talking about. I want to know more about your business. I want to know how Insperity can help. I want to know what you're doing for X, Y, and Z. Let's talk about this because I know that we can be a benefit. So trying to, I think the strategy of trying to be vague so that they take it like, okay, what's 5-minute meeting? Sure. Yeah, I'll set it. What do you want to talk about? And then you come in like, oh, tell me what your budget looks like. And they go, what? I don't want to talk about this. I'm not going to give you my census data. What do you mean? You want to know the age of my employees? Where's this coming from? It just leads to bad things.
Right.
Or in my case, I could have found that guy a new job and I probably would have not been in the spirit anymore. But it didn't work out that way. But yeah, communication is best. Be clear, be upfront about your intentions and why you're actually setting this meeting, and it'll lead to more BPs, more DCs than trying to go the vague route.
Right. So there's a lot of questions in the chat about what your actual talk tracks are for prospecting. I just want everyone listening to know we're definitely going to get to that. I know that's what everyone wants to know, but just hold tight and we're definitely going to get to some of those talk tracks that work. Let's talk a little bit about company size. One of the things that I see sometimes that newer people do is gravitate to calling smaller companies, right? So even when they do get a discovery call, sometimes they're not even 5 people yet. They're targeting startups, that kind of thing. When you guys are deciding to develop a new kind of colder list, like you talked about, Sarah, what size companies are you looking for as a minimum when you're looking at, you know, say LinkedIn count, which sounds like where everyone's getting their stuff from?
I'm looking for at least 20 and over.
Okay.
At least. And I'll tell you one thing I learned early on that. You need a mix to get to these, you know, to retain clients and build your residuals. Take the 5-10 mans as they come from referrals. Don't spend your time looking for those. You'll get those. And there'll be nice little pops here and there. They'll help you obtain your goals on, you know, financially, as well as deal count, which we all need to hit the different metrics annually. But as you start to get larger, you're actually getting into, don't be scared of it. I was a little scared. I'm like, oh, they have real HR problems, which is exactly what we're trying to solve. And then the benefits and the numbers work because they have things already built, and you're not trying to like force this huge, I call it a nuclear bomb to kill a fly on their benefit problem. They have, it's a way better conversation. It's a way better use of your time. It may take more touches, you know, or relationships or introductions to get into these. But once you do, the quality of your discovery call, your Valdev, where the numbers align, there is actually, like, that is where we make the most sense. 25 to 100, 25 to 75, you know, all day long. So I'll be honest, early on, I was nervous. I'm like, these are big. I'm new. They're actually easier. You know, maybe I think they are because your conversations are more natural and the numbers just work better. And it is a great fit for those two pieces of our proposal. And they stay, you know, because they have those HR problems. So that was my whole tirade on over 20, but I start over 20 all day long.
Gotcha. Laura, Felix, agree, disagree?
5s are the worst. They are so in the weeds. And they're so scared to spend any money. It's grueling. I think that it's also great to start in the teens. Like if you have one, you know, our average size company is 20, so you can go 20%, 30% in either direction. But like if you have like 15 people, 20 people, you have a CEO or a CFO who's totally overworked and a mad hatter, and they'll make decisions a lot more quickly. And then I agree with all of Sarah H's points on the larger they are, the more infrastructure they have, and the more cost they're spending, and the more pain they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep, I agree with that. I mean, the worst thing you want to do is go into a prospecting session, connect with a 2 or 5 employee company, maybe even a 10 employee company. They've never offered benefits before, and your whole talk track is, oh, we'll save you, we'll save you, we'll save you. And then you get default pricing, and it's like, whoa. And these people oftentimes have got benefits from another company. Then they look at our rates and go like, whoa, what happened to the PEO and the savings that you sang on the call? That's why I wanted to meet with you, and that's not there. So sometimes it's not the best fit. So that's why I think, to both Laura and Sarah's point, the larger the organization, the more infrastructure, the more problems they're having. They're at 30 employees. Do you understand the compliance ramifications of 30 employees? No. Oh my God, I'm going to get this deal. But with smaller organizations, they don't know what they don't know, and promising them stuff that they may not see, it's kind of, you're doing a little bit of disservice to you and them.
Yeah.
But don't go whale hunting.
Yeah,
Don't
stay away from 200.
I think that Sarah H said it really well when she said you need a combination of big and small to hit the achievement levels. And she's right, like, to not be hurt when clients leave as well. You need to have smaller ones and larger ones in the mix.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, you know, Sarah, I absolutely agree with you. I think you run across the 5s and 10s. They're going to come naturally. You guys on the call, you're all developing these COIs, these partners in your area. They're going to be sending you things, and you don't get to be as selective. right? So when someone sends you a lead with a 5 or a 10 person company, you're obviously going to take it. But when you're sitting down and developing your own list, I agree with the panel. Shoot a little bit larger, find those companies that actually have a need. Sarah H., I was exactly like you. I was so intimidated when I was new. And so I think I only called on companies under 10 because for some reason I thought that was easier. And about halfway through my first year, I was like, oh my God, my deal count is great, but I'm never going to hit President's Club or Chairman's Club.
Exactly. Yeah.
Everything is single digits. So, so definitely mix some of those in. I will tell you guys that from what we're seeing right now, the trend is larger companies are gravitating towards us. When we look at kind of what we've been closing since this whole pandemic began, mid-market is having a phenomenal year. We've closed more larger deals. And when I say larger deals, I mean like 50 plus deals since the pandemic started than what we typically do as a ratio of our business. The companies that aren't coming on, generally speaking, are those smaller companies because every dollar is counting right now. And when they strip away the things they don't absolutely have to have, you know, a 5-person, 7-person company where everyone's sharing the same last name and probably sitting around the Thanksgiving table together, they don't need strategic HR in their business today. And so it kind of pushes Insperity down that need side. So I would say if you're developing kind of some of those cold lists, listening to our expert panel, and shoot for those teens, 20, 25 and higher companies. And in that, you're going to run across some that are smaller and some that are bigger, and that's okay. So great stuff, everybody. I appreciate that. All right, so let's move on. And so you've found the right companies, you know you're in the right area, you're calling on the right industry. How do you know who is the right person to reach out to in the business? We've talked about this a little bit already, a little bit of dissension in our panel, but that's okay, between CEO and other C-level executives. Anything you want to add on this question that you haven't already talked about that you think would help our newer folks?
I guess regardless of title, it's whoever can sign.
And how do you know who that is when you're prospecting?
Well, usually start at the CEO, and then if you get pushed down to like an HR person, I'll say, well, sometimes they could be intimidated by us, and you know, are you going to rejoin us in the process? I don't want them to think that we're taking their job or a resource for them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say one thing in prospecting, I do start with the CEO, and if I'm not getting anywhere the first couple times, I'll mix in the CFO, the COO, if they have a VP of People Ops, that seems to be a popular title here in Denver. But I'm going to try that CEO a couple times, you know, more than a couple, probably 4, 5, 6 times. If I'm getting nowhere, I'm like, all right, I'm going to the CEO or the CFO if I'm really determined to get into that company. And if you do get pushed down, I always laugh. It's kind of one of my favorites. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, I'll work with Sarah. But hey, you know, Susie, you need to be a part of this process because what we do is aligned with the strategy and your people. Like, I'm happy to talk tactical. We'll do numbers. I have a whole executive summary, but, you know, and so it's great in a vacuum. Sometimes they're like, yeah, or they're like, okay, and they don't, and you fight against that headwind in the process. Just know that happens. It's not going to be perfect, but you at least have to, like, if you don't say it, it's not going to happen. So I usually say it, typical of my personality, in some self-deprecating way. I'm like, Mary's not going to like me because she's going to think I'm going to take her job or whatever, and just, you know, feel it out, but make sure you are setting the tone with, to Laura's point, the signer, because I remember Bev Gibson telling me a million times, she's like, I've sold 100 HR managers all day long, and then they can't sign. So you don't want to waste all of your time if you're with people who, again, to Laura's point, can't actually put pen to paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I find that a lot of newer folks, again, kind of the things to avoid is, again, it is tough to set appointments. Right? I'm going to say that about 20 more times on this call. I know it is tough to set appointments. It is even tougher to get the ear of a business owner or a CEO and get him to set an appointment with you. And so your DM's on your back, he or she wants you to set an appointment. And so you've got to set an appointment with someone. And we tend to then go down to office managers, HR people. I had a BPA once, he doesn't work here anymore, so I can talk about it, who literally every appointment that we went into that I went on with him as a DM was with the person sitting at the front desk. I finally said, I'm not going on any more appointments with you if we don't make it more than 5 steps into this office. Like, that's the wrong person to set an appointment with. That's called the receptionist. Stop getting her to meet with you. And so, you know, that's why it's so important to hold on to that and hold yourself to that in meeting with that better person, because the alternative is you have a lot of discovery calls that don't go anywhere. Or even worse, to Bev's point, you have a lot of processes all the way through that never get the person to say yes.
Yeah, HR manager is not your friend. They know enough about the world they live in, but the minute you start getting into strategic conversations and they're like, oh, you know what, I don't think we have anything planned for 2020. I think we're good. Like, oh, okay. And the more conversations you have with an HR manager, you're going to find out what they know and what they don't. And really, if they're even at the table with that strategic team, if they're not even there and they're there for onboarding purposes, okay, then yeah, they're going to say, oh, you can help me with onboarding? Yeah, I want the help. Okay, but what about benefits? Oh, I don't deal with that. Mm-hmm. What else you got? It's like, oh, okay. Same thing with the push down, much like Laura and Sarah mentioned, it comes with the understanding that, hey, we're going to eventually need to get these people in the room too. More than happy to talk to you, more than happy to let you know what we do and answer any questions, but this is something that could be a fit for your organization. We're going to need the CEO, we're going to need the CFO, we're going to need the COO. Because early, I say early in my career, but my first year, I'd have a lot of conversations and get to a point where things look good and say, okay, well, I'm going to send you the Schedule B. Oh, no, I got to pitch this to my CEO. It's like, it's almost like they have a board. Again, I got to pitch it to the CEO, and then I'll let you know how it goes, and fingers crossed. Like, okay. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I'll take that meeting. I'll have a conversation, but it's always with the expectation that we're going to have another one, and we're going to have CEO, CFO, COO, whoever it is that signs in the room next time.
Mm-hmm. So question from the field. So how do you help them, meaning these kind of lower level people, if you get pushed down to them, how do you help them be heroes in this process?
They look like heroes. Like my DM, Abdil, and I always joke that sometimes you need a champion to help you move through the process. Like someone, an internal advocate to help navigate. But it's true, if we look good, they look good. And if they look good, we look good. So everybody kind of works together. And I joke like at the beginning, like, oh, you know, this is like a group project and we have to work together. We have to collaborate. And it's true. And like, if they have other people who make the decision, or if they have a private equity firm they need to run it by, we should be putting that presentation or that one-sheeter together. Or we should be meeting with those people, not leaving it up to them, because this is very hard to sell.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that what we've seen over the years is that decisions, even in smaller companies, have become much more collaborative. Would you guys agree? Where I think earlier in my career, it was the CEO. If you can get in with the CEO, he's going to make his decision, he's going to sign. And now, even when you're sitting in front of that CEO, he's still getting buy-in from different folks in order to make that decision. So if you get pushed down, as long as you have the agreement that you need to get moved back up, you can create some really strong champions or advocates for this.
And to Sarah H's point, there is like a chief people officer now, or a head of diversity and inclusion. But those are all great places because culture is critical to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned very, very early on, one of the senior BPAs in my office when I was a BPA said, find out who HR reports to. If HR reports up to the CEO, you have a leader who's concerned about the people in his business. If HR reports up to the CFO, you have a problem because they're all about just the numbers and finances. And I thought that was pretty telling.
Yeah.
So that's something I kind of carried with me for, my career, is understanding that structure gives you a lot of insight into how that company thinks about their people.
Mm-hmm. I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please, Felix.
Oh, I was just going to say, here in the Bay Area, I think with so many startups, with so many fast growing companies, I think a lot of the CEOs, they hire people with the understanding or with the expectation that I hired you, you deal with it. So I think that's why I've done well with people that may not be the CEO, because they say, look, I don't want to you deal, whatever you decide, just give me what I have to sign and I'll sign it. If this is what you think this is going to work for you, I hired you to make these decisions, COO, bring it to me when you're done and when you're done with your evaluation. But they sometimes hire those people, to your point, Sarah, where now it's an entire table that's making this decision, as opposed to that one ultimate decision maker. But yeah, I mean, I feel like getting that champion, even if it's a push down, building that person, building that cheerleader. So when you go up, you've got this person going up with you saying, hey, this is really good. You need to listen to this because we talked about X, Y, Z. This is going to be a culture fit that's going to help us in these areas. And we should put this in. And sometimes that alone is like, okay, this sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm. Good. So this is kind of right along the lines, and a good question from the chat that came from Cindy Caldwell. So you're meeting with the CEO. He or she says, my team has full authority to make the decision. Whatever they say to do, I'll do. But the team doesn't feel that same sense of empowerment. Even when the CEO says it's so-and-so's decision, oftentimes that person still feels like they need to get the CEO's buy-in. So what do you say to the CEO to make sure that you're working with an actual decision maker? What does that look like? Or what does that sound like early on in the process, so you make sure that you're working towards the same common goal at the end?
Sometimes I make a joke like, oh, would the DocuSign go to you? I know Sarah H said pen to paper, but that's a little antiquated.
Thanks, Laura.
So if they can't DocuSign, or if they can't sign the signature pages, then I always ask to bring in any key players. I also recommend that they meet the service team and they see a demo. And I ask them too, is there anyone you'd like to invite or bring into that process? So kind of start the collaboration early on.
I think that's a good question and a tough one to answer, because I do think it's a little reading between the lines. It's a little soft closing, to Laura's point, in the process. I've had plenty that I've lost because I haven't empowered the team well enough, or I wasn't on point with they didn't understand what the CEO would say yes to. So you're tracking with HR or VP of People Ops or Biz Ops, and then he's like, the pain to change is too much. And you're like, well, then why the heck did we go through this? Are we missing? So I think that's a hard one. And I think, to Laura's point, it is still getting that collaboration, reading between the lines, and getting some soft closes or buy-in early. Like, hey, Miss CEO, we had this conversation. Are you going to be part of the team? Is it from the team? And just ask those direct questions. Be like, how are we moving through this process? I want to be mindful, blah, blah, blah. I think that's a tough one to navigate, because there's so much underneath there that you really need to ask those direct questions to understand, are they aligned, and, are they nervous to present to the CEO?
Yeah, well, I think it comes a lot out of fear. Listen, the safest decision that someone below the CEO can make is to stay with the status quo. No one ever got fired for staying with the status quo. And so when a CEO pushes the decision down and says, I'm going to be fine with whatever they say, just put yourself in their shoes and imagine the level of pressure that they're feeling on, if I say to do this and it falls apart, I've got my name on that thing, that's, you know, that's career suicide. I'd rather pass. And so, so that's what I think it comes down to, is understanding not why the answer might be no, or not understanding the answer is no, but understanding why the answer might be no. And then attacking that earlier on in the process to say, look, making a change in the company is risky, right? I understand that, whether it's Insperity or anything else. So what's going to make the risk to switch worthwhile? The value to switch has to be greater than the risk to do nothing, you know, the risk of doing nothing. That's my 2 cents. Laura, you had something to add too?
Usually in the first call, like I asked, like, you know, what's your time frames? Like if the money looks good and all goes right, when would you want to make a decision? Who's involved in the decision-making process? What's your process? And then I say, this is what I suggest our process is. And it's like the census, service team, demo. Who do you want involved in there? So like give, take. It should all be collaborative and very nonchalant. When I started here, they said the training was, the only event was running payroll, and everything else should be a non-event. But bring in everybody you can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we have, as usual in my trainings, gone completely off topic of just setting better discovery calls. We're all the way down into closing and decision making and all that. So hopefully you guys are still tracking with us out there. We haven't gone way over your heads, but let's get back to the prospecting piece itself. And so what does your first, now we're getting into the actual prospecting, right? What does your first attempt to contact a new company look or sound like? You know, do you use, is it a phone call? Do you do a LinkedIn connection first? Do you do a drop of some sort, obviously in a non-pandemic world? Is it an email? So kind of starting with your process. Felix, why don't we start with you this time? You've identified them, you've scrubbed your list, you've said this looks like a company I want to talk to. Now what do you do?
So I typically start with LinkedIn. Try and connect that way, assuming it's not a COI introduction or a warm intro from somebody else. I'll start with LinkedIn, get a familiarity with who that person is, what their background is, message connection. They accept the connection. I reach out with a phone call as my next point. No phone call, voicemail. Then I'll send an email. And I know we're going to get to that too, but in terms of cadence, LinkedIn, phone call / email, whatever I don't do, those are the 3 touches, rinse and repeat. And if I don't get any traction from those 6 touches, then you kind of, you let them loose and follow up with them at a later date. No reason to belabor the point and waste your time, waste really in the company's time to continue to try this one prospect that you're married to and think they're going to be amazing. If they don't see it, what's the point?
Gotcha. Sarah, how about you? What's your process?
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit different now that we're all in this pandemic. So I'm going back to, I like to be in person. I feel like I'm better that way. You know, a little drop-in, a little present, a little self-deprecation, something. But we don't have that luxury right now. So if I'm not working just cold leads, which I am now, you know, we're all back to basics. I will check LinkedIn first to see if there's someone in my network that I can reach out to and make an introduction. That's my first go-to because warm introductions are always better. If not, I will connect with them, send an email, do a little blurb on why, you know, hi, you're interesting, your company's cool, times are tough, or let's talk about 2021. And I will just say it. And then I will go hunting their email and contact information if it's not on their LinkedIn page. And I put that into kind of the next layer, which is more of my email campaign, picking up the phone, calling and saying, hey, I'm trying to, you know, reach out to you. And I'll just, you know, short, sweet, to the point. That's usually my go-to on completely cold, have no contacts that I know there or old clients or whatever. I will go in that order on a completely new company.
Gotcha. Laura, how about you? Anything different?
No, I don't necessarily think it matters how you touch them. as long as you do it as long as you do it multiple times and have a cadence, because they need like name and brand recognition. So just as long as you're getting yourself out there multiple times.
So what's multiple to you? Define that as a number.
6.
Your number 6, Sarah. What? And Felix is number 6. Sarah, what's your number? How many times do you reach out to him before you put him back onto a drip?
Probably like 3 to 5, 3 to 6. Just depends. And or I go to, like I said, another person, another executive in the company.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, good. Those are lower than I would have expected. Like when I hear folks, I hear like, oh, I got them on my 9th attempt, or I got them on my 10th attempt, or whatever. Do you guys?
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, do you guys find that, like, did you used to call more and it just wasn't effective, so there wasn't the value in continuing to do that, or how'd you arrive at 5 to 6 being the right number?
So if you ask
I think
Ron, he says he calls someone once, and if they don't call him back, they're done. But I found that 3 phone calls and 3 emails, so 6 total, is sufficient, because if they don't believe in what we do and it's not a mindset fit, it doesn't matter how many times I reach out. Nothing's going to resonate. I didn't mean to cut you off, Sarah H.
No, that's okay. I find on the the active emails and phone calls, I'll take a little break, and I shouldn't just say it's 3 to 6. I think that's deceiving. I'll put them more in my 3-week kind of drip. Maybe they're not going through a benefit renewal. There's nothing, to Laura's point, that's hooking them right now. So I then put them in more of my, okay, take a breather from stalking them on the phone. I'm going to just drop in their inbox every 3 to 4 weeks. Hey, and then change my message up a little bit. So I think, to your point, Sarah, when actually some of those, if it's not that ideal timing, like they're not buying a car right now and pay attention to the commercial, or they're not going through a reason why they're selling their house and need to call this realtor, they're starting, then those drips are going to be important. And maybe on the 9th drip, that's when their benefit renewal is coming up, and in their whole business process, they're like, oh, okay, we got to start thinking about this. Maybe, or something happens in between, right? Like they get a whole slew of money, and now they're like, we got to grow. We need more infrastructure. So I think it is closer still, if I looked at it, probably to close to double digits. If it's totally cold, there's nobody in there, but I will back off of the phone calls for a little bit. Now I might go back to that, in another couple months. But that's my overall cadence to kind of put them into the drip campaign.
Gotcha. So one of the questions that came in was, when do you cycle back again after 6 or so touches? And so it sounds like it's just active prospecting, if I'm kind of understanding you correctly, active prospecting for that 6 or so touches, and then into some sort of drip campaign once every 3 or 4 weeks, so that your name's still in their inbox. And then when would you then pick up again into maybe something more active? Or is that not as defined?
I think I'll jump back in. Now, like getting closer to fall campaign and end of year, and whether they have a benefit renewal or not, they're starting to think about 2020. Whether it was hot and heavy in February or it's hot and heavy in July, I'm going to start picking that up this month in August to start talking about 2021. So everybody who's been in there, I really probably balance it more on seasonality. Then, I will probably just keep them in my drip until we start to get to this point in the year. Or if I know they have a benefit renewal, if there's some other intel I have, I'll base it off of that. But I'd say as a generalization, it's going to be more seasonality of, hey, like, let's start thinking about 2021. And I'm going to go in a little harder on everybody I've put into, my prospecting list.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Like if you do connect with someone, getting even that benefit renewal date can be really helpful to determine when to re-engage them. If you get someone on the phone and they just aren't interested, not the right time, whatever, they give you their objections. If you're able to say, maybe when you're looking at your benefits renewal, it might make sense. When do you renew? They'll often give you that info. Yeah. And then when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, this is another question from the field. when you connect with someone on LinkedIn, what amount of time do you wait before following up? Do you jump on it immediately, or is this a little more like dating where you try to play it cool and wait a couple of days before you reach out?
Always strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
All right.
You can't, there's nothing to play cool here.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and you'll find out right away if you jump on it, and you'll find out much like I'm sure dating is nowadays, which I'm lucky enough no longer to need to do, but you'll find out who just accepted it to accept it because they want to build out their network, or who accepted it because they see you and go, oh, this could be a really good connection. Because there's been plenty of times I've called a LinkedIn connection. They go, who? Oh, no, I didn't want that. I just saw your invite. And then there's other times like, thank you so much. I've been waiting to reach out to you. I'm happy to have you on the phone. Here's what's going on. So you find out right away, and you didn't waste 2 weeks thinking like, oh, this is going to be really good when I talk to him.
Right. Good. And then for the panel, so how do you know that they even heard your voicemail or read your email?
You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, we used to have Eloqua.
Mm-hmm.
I just go for numbers and I go at it. I'm very honestly not in any of those tracking things because I would just rather send out another email to someone new. That's just my philosophy. It's probably, there's pros and cons to that. But I don't have like a read receipt on mine. I don't, I have no idea if there's technology around if they knew you got your voicemail or not.
Yeah.
Does anybody? That would be nice to know.
No, but I think insperity begets insperity. And like I've sold deals, like I've prospected someone and they're like, no, this isn't a fit for me, but then they pass it along to somebody else and I've sold them. Or you could prospect like crazy and you think nothing's going to happen, and then a CFO that you sold a few years ago pops up somewhere else, or a COI can give you a lead. So just getting your name out there and sharing Insperity's brand just brings good things in return.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You got to have a lot of lines in the water when you're fishing, right? And so the worst thing you can do is just sit on the deck of the boat and not have anything in there. So when we talked a lot about the number of attempts, but I'm curious, what's your prospecting cadence? So how often do you reach out? How many days do you wait in between attempts or what have you? Laura, why don't you start?
Okay.
Laura?
So I do every other day. So it's like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday. Today would be Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday. So like every other day, and a phone call and an email on the same day.
Okay, good. Anything different from Sarah Felix?
I'm probably less. I'm probably a few more days in between. And I also find the way my days flow, I would love to have that much consistent time. I could probably be very honestly, more disciplined around that. But I'll tend to do mine at least, phone calls. I'm going to follow all those up, wait a couple days, email. I usually, if I've left a voicemail, I will send an email that day. I just think the double whammy, similar to you, Laura, is nice. Like, hey, if you're not getting your voicemail, every CEO is on their phone. They're going to see your email. So I'm probably waiting. And then once they get into my drip, where I'm just, plugging in their inbox, it's about every 3 weeks. But I have different lists that are flowing. So sometimes it's like 2 weeks, sometimes it's 3. But I like to stay 3 or 4 weeks out from, just hitting reset on all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty same. I typically do calls like Tuesday, Thursday. LinkedIn invites and requests are every day. I'm always looking on LinkedIn, looking at lists. I do think it's important to take that break because you don't want to call somebody 18 times in a span of 2 weeks and then they finally say yes. That should be also a clear indication, like, is this really going to be valuable? Because they may just say yes, so you stop calling. And then you get on the DC and they go, stop, please. I don't want this. I don't, because I've unfortunately had that too. So it's important to take that break, let them digest what the voicemails, what the emails you sent, stay on there, you know, in front of them with emails every once in a while. But that's typically Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are email, LinkedIn messages days, Tuesday, Thursday are call days. And then much to Sarah H's point, give it a break, give it a rest, and then try them again, probably in a couple weeks or 3.
Gotcha. When you guys are sending LinkedIn requests, are you using similar language to like an email that you'd send, or do you have something else that you use to get people to connect with you?
Oh, I don't do LinkedIn requests.
All right. Felix, you talked about LinkedIn. What do you typically write when you're inviting people to connect?
I don't. I just send them. I think we oftentimes overanalyze the messages that we're sending, and we get so bogged and caught up in, okay, well, what can I say to hook this person, accept my invite? Just send it. Just send it. And when they accept, then you have a clear avenue to at least send them a message and say, hey, thanks for the connection. I was hoping to get some time. I'd love to get some time. I want to get some time. There's your canvas. But to set it up before, they're going to look at it and go like, next. I don't think that's the end all be all to have the perfect invite message. Just send it and wait till they accept, and then it's free game.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, do you agree, or do you do something different?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I will send, I'll just send blank connections. If there is some mutual connections with either clients or people around town that are influential, I'll be like, hey, how have we not met, right? And then, you know, my messaging, whether it is in mail or the drip campaign, it's similar. It's, you know, 3 sentences to the point. I mix up what those are, and I give them a reason why I'm reaching out. I don't think there's anything. I've talked to clients and friends who own companies, and I'm like, what gets you? And you guys should do the same. Ask, what gets your attention? Why do you say yes to a cold prospect? Find that information out. And, you know, what I've gleaned from my clients and friends is persistence, right? Like if you are in their inbox, when that problem finally comes up, they're going to be like, Sarah has been asking about this for a year or however long it is, or something that's direct. I mean, they are, you know, they're going to say yes or no if it is an exact time for that. Do not overanalyze it. 3 sentences, like whatever they can read on their phone. So I just mix it up, and I do keep it consistent because it's easier on my brain to know that I've just kept all my messaging consistent too.
Mm-hmm. I like that. How have we not met? That would work on me. Just FYI, I get a lot of LinkedIn.
Good.
That one would work on me. I like that one.
Very nice.
so
I do
charming.
use that one. I try, Laura. I try. Charm and bribery tend to go a long way. More bribery.
We have a couple more questions. I know we're right at the end of our time, but as usual, I have horrible time management, so we're going to go a little bit long. I hope our audience can stick with us because we are getting to the good stuff about what you guys actually say. So I think we've already talked about this next question about what do you do when you're pushed down to a lower level employee by the owner. We talked about that earlier on, where you'll take it but set the expectation that you are going to move back up. I think the one thing that I would say on this, and again directed at the newer folks, is if you're finding that pretty consistently, you're getting pushed down to, oh, you need to talk to my HR person, oh, you need to talk to my controller or my office manager or whomever. Do a little self-assessment and look at what am I saying on the phone that's making that push down the obvious choice for the owner, right? The owner is always going to try to get off the phone because you caught him on a prospecting call and nobody wants to be sold to. So that's a natural inclination. But if in what you're saying, you're making it seem like the HR person is the right person to talk to, just think about how your message is resonating. And we're going to get into messaging here in just a minute. So question as we're moving on to the next slide, back to LinkedIn, how many prospects do you target on LinkedIn in a typical day? So Felix and Sarah, it sounds like that's kind of your methodology. So how many LinkedIn invites are you sending out on a given day?
I don't think I count anymore. If that's any indication. I don't know how many of the BPAs out there are utilizing Navigator, but I would pull a list and literally go down once I see who the contact is, CEO, CFO, COO, look at the company and match it to everything that we talked about earlier. How long have they been around? What series funding are they in? How many employees do they have? Go down the checklist, invite sent on. Move to the next one. Do the same thing, same cadence, invite sent. And you just go. And at that point, I don't think I stop. I'm like, all right, I sent 10. I feel good. Today was a good day. Because to be honest, those 10, they may not all accept. So that's why I don't think I count. You just keep sending to the good prospects, get in people's inbox. And the really cool thing about LinkedIn invites is that they get those messages too. And it's always followed with, oh, so-and-so viewed your profile. And if they accept it and they viewed your profile, there's a pretty good chance that there's some correlation there that they want to talk. If it's just a blind accept, it's probably a network play. But yeah, I don't think I count anymore.
Gotcha. Sarah, how about you? Any idea?
No, I think it's going to be like the most company line answer, but I just get as many as I can out. You know, if I've got some extra time, I mean, it is honestly still, for me, 11 years in, a numbers game. I've seen my numbers change year over year. I feel better at the end of the day if I have exhausted as many, you know, if I have an hour, if I have 20 minutes, you know, maybe it's 2 people that day, maybe it's 80 people on Thursday. It just, I just try to get as many out during the day. Now, if I had a whole day or most of a day to do prospecting, I really would dial it back and be like, all right, I'm, you know, kind of splicing it out in the sense that I'm going to send at least 50 invites. I'm going to start working on 50 new, you know, and work on big numbers, because you're going to get efficiencies in your system of starting to find boom, 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 boom. And if you're paying attention to it and you're, you know, I always, Sean Brandon knows this, I liken it to working out. Like if you get on the treadmill, you're going to start getting more miles in shorter amount of time. That's what I would focus on. Like, okay, I'm at least going to do 50 in-mails, and I'm going to work on or reach outs or cold emails or whatever. Then I'm going to follow up on the ones I sent. And I think that's where I would start. Mine is just, I want to get as many out as I can, especially right now, because we're just starting to, I mean, fall campaign is right now. You have to get those out to fill your pipeline with cold leads for August and September. I mean, this is definitely haymaking time. I know you've heard that a million times, but it is. So that's, I would just, as big of numbers, as many as you can get out, you're going to get better at it and more efficient, and it's just going to put more DCs in your pipeline, 100%.
And
so that's
I
my answer, non-answer.
Yeah, no. And I think that that's one of the things that I see, you know, in talking with a lot of new people, is that newer BPAs tend to underestimate the amount of attempts they need to be making. Where I'll talk to a new person sometime who maybe doesn't have the number of discovery calls they need to have, and I'll say, okay, so how many attempts on average do you think you're doing per day? And they're like 15 to 20. Well, you know, there's your problem right there, is that's just not scalable. It's just not enough attempts to get there. And one of the things that I see bogs people down as I sort of dig into that is they're doing a lot of research before they'll call a company. So, so we've talked about some of the things that you want to know, but I'd be interested to hear from you guys, like when you think about it, how much time do you think you spend per prospect before you decide to do a reach out to them? Not before the discovery call, because obviously you're going to do research before you walk into a DC, but just before you decide to reach out to someone or put them on your list to target. How much time do you think you spend on research?
As little as possible on everything, honestly, because it's what Sarah H. said, it's a numbers game, and it's particularly more challenging now, which just means that more effort needs to go in to get a higher output. So like for me, there should be 10 fresh phone calls and emails per hour. So if you broke that down, that's 6 minutes per prospect. And even as I say that, that feels like an awful long amount of time. But but that includes calling and preparing the email, right? Like, and researching them. But I don't want to spend a lot of time. And even like when we get to what do I say like as little as I can, as fast as possible. Because if they say no, I got to go to the next. And if they say no, I got to go to the next.
For those of you listening, I call Laura a shark because just like a shark, she never stops moving. Like a shark, I don't know if it's urban myth or not, but if they stop swimming, they die, right? And with Laura, like over the years, I've just realized, like if she's not calling someone and actively doing something, I think she might die. So that doesn't surprise me that you say that at all. That's very much you. Question on the chat here from a couple of different folks. What are you using for lists? We've talked a lot about the reach outs, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the call, but what are you using for lists, maybe other than LinkedIn?
Read. If there's a commercial on YouTube, you could search under zip codes or, well, now we have that new Zoom, but you can search under zip codes or industry on LinkedIn. It's just like follow the money. Like Sarah H said in the beginning, are they in essential? Are they streaming right now? Are they laying off? Are they in the hospitality? Stay away, right? Are they in life sciences? That's huge right now.
Gotcha. Any other resources that anyone's using in particular?
I used to use the Chamber of Commerce for a particular city. It at least, I think my first year I closed 2 or 3 deals off of a chamber list. And it's a blind list, but it gives you a lot of information. Here's the business, here's the number, here's the contact, so on and so forth. And it's free. You don't have to pay for it. You just go in and you can see the directory of who's affiliated with the chamber, and you've got something to do. And go to areas that maybe there's not a lot of BPAs hitting up, and find those areas. Sometimes there may not be money there. Sometimes there may be money, and it's all about putting out volume. It's not kind of going back to the numbers. I count when I'm done. I don't set that number. Okay, I'm going to send 20 today. Okay. I want to look at it and go, wow, I sent 200. That's pretty good. I didn't even know I sent that many. So count when you're done, not when you start, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. All right. And here's what everybody wants to know, you guys. So what talk tracks do you use that really resonate with the business owner? So Sarah, you said something early on that got someone very excited on here. So we're going to start with you. What are some of the things?
What did I say? I don't even remember. But
we'll have to go back and listen to the recording.
I know. Sorry. I will. It's all off the top of my brain, so it's legit. What? One thing, and it's not necessarily phrases. It's more or less style. Is I think I've said many times, I will keep it short and sweet and direct, and I will switch that up every month. And I'm happy to help anyone and share what I've done, since the very beginning, before we had Zoom and all this stuff. It was, technology has ironically come a long way in 11 years, especially at Insperity. But I will say, like, hi. I will extend some compliments, like, hi, I came across your company in the news, or it looks like you're doing exciting things. Would love to talk to you about your outsourced HR partner, or something of that. I will mention in a very vague way what we do and why I want to talk to them, and be like, let me know if, I used to extend coffees or lunches, like, let's grab coffee or lunch in July. And then I would just kind of change the month as we go. And I would change the messaging a little bit, like, hey, July was crazy. August, I'm sure you're starting to ramp up. Like, is it a great time to meet now? And sometimes I would put in more specific things around the timing of the year. Obviously now, probably what I said was, there is no better time to talk about strategy, outsourcing, how to pivot and help, in times like these. So that's my messaging right now. It is very direct. It's, these are different times. I'm sure you're innovating and figuring out how to, set yourself up for 2021. Let's chat around your outsourced benefits HR partnership. Something like that. Very simple. I at least put what I do, kind of. But I used to send out letters, and I would handwrite them, and they were this long, and emails that were this long, and I never got anything. Laura's laughing because we all have. nobody reads that, right? Like, think about we read Reddit articles. So, like, again, 3 sentences.
You wrote someone a poem.
A soliloquy about HR. I was like, it's great. Flowers grow. Your people are happy. That's just always been my go-to. It fits my personality. I'm kind of like a quick, direct, let's, figure it out. Are we going to do business together? But I keep it short and sweet, and I mix it up. And I think things around benefits, outsourced HR, how are you handling these times, compliance, your people, like very high level topics I find seem to resonate for different reasons and different times of the year. So I try to incorporate those in each one of my drip campaigns, and just maybe compliance is the one for this guy, or maybe benefits is the one for her. Just think about adding a little diversity, but hitting on the head of why people buy from us. And those are, read the brochure, go through those high level things in the executive summary. Profit generation, I mean, all of that's why businesses buy. So put it in your email in a high level way. That's my soapbox on a very long explanation on things that resonate, but those are always my go-to.
Good. Felix, how about you?
Kind of the same. I think the one thing that the one mistake that we do as newer BPAs is we feel if it's not working after a day, all right, I got to switch it up. Give it some time. Develop that message. Try it out. Much to Sarah H's point, give it a month and then change the message. Don't be so fast to change your messaging because you're saying something wrong. Because what might happen is you try one message one day, the next day you change it, and for that business, it could have been yesterday's message that resonated with them. But I tend to lean on people strategy, cost containment. If I'm lucky to find somebody that is already on a PEO, then that changes the talk track in and of itself to let me tell you why we're better, as opposed to, do you know what a PEO is? What are you doing for benefits? But I tend to focus on cost containment, HR infrastructure, and then people strategy and culture. And especially during this time where you can't really just go out and do a happy hour and set it up and, oh yeah, my people are good. There's companies out there asking, yes, I don't think my culture is good. This remote work has opened up a lot of wounds that I covered with bandages, and I need some help.
Good. All right, Laura, bring us home. What do you say that gets people to meet with you?
I always like to make people laugh because they're more willing to talk to you or work with you if you make them laugh. And you also have to be a little bit more empathetic right now, which is important. I kind of stick it to like group buying power of $275,000 for medical insurance and workers' comp, turnkey HR or scalable solution, liability management, culture evolution, people development, like all those kind of buzzwords stick out, and something should jump out at somebody. So that's kind of what I stick to.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think that everyone on this presentation will notice is that all three of you have kind of engaging, humorous personalities. I think that you're very easy for people to talk to listen to. I think people definitely, probably want to listen and engage with you. And then the other thing that all three of you have in common that, quite frankly, I think every BPA needs to master in order to be successful here is a high level of confidence. And Sarah and I were talking on the phone yesterday, kind of, prepping for this call. And even we both said it starting out. We were so nervous, right? We didn't want to meet with a 10-person company. Oh my gosh, right? But you kind of have to fake it, because the reality is whatever you're talking about on the phone, whatever message you're delivering, you automatically know more than the guy that you're talking to. You can be confident that whatever you're choosing to say and talk about, you already know more than they do. And I think that the most important thing that you can master is to be confident and engaging and personable on the phone. And to me, my experience tells me that the words don't matter nearly as much as kind of the personality behind it, so to speak. So, you know, definitely something to practice. If you sound uncomfortable, if you sound like you're stumbling over your words, if you're not, you know, if you're not comfortable with your messaging, you're probably not going to set as many appointments as you want to. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, and I think that's important is know what you know and don't try and be an expert in something you're not comfortable with, because the minute you go down a rabbit hole, and for example, if you talk about, oh, let me explain how we price benefits, and then somebody asks a question about, oh, you know, well, what about this? And you don't have an answer. It's like, okay, that credibility might just have gone out the window. Like, oh, okay, you're just a sales guy. When we do so much more, but I think we rush to answer prospects' questions once we have them on the phone, and we say the wrong thing, or we say, oh yeah, we could save you $50,000. Okay, how? And we don't know how to answer that. It's like, okay, next. So know what you know, be confident in what you know, and know that of everybody else out there, Insperity is the best. We can help a lot of businesses do really, really good things. And have that behind you, and have that kind of push you forward, and don't get caught in the weeds, because you may get a question that you don't know how to answer, and you might lose them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. All right, you guys. Well, we kind of took our questions from the field as we were going along. I think that we answered pretty much everything. Let's see. Oh, here's one. I've heard different answers to scrubbing all leads before calling. Some feedback from the panel on how much you scrub your list. I'm assuming she means in one force.
Yeah, for sure, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
You have to.
I just want to say one thing. Oh, no, you go first.
Oh, go ahead. No. Laura,
No,
the floor is yours.
I was just going to say, no, it's hard out there, but there's no better company to be at. And there's no place I would rather be, especially in this economic climate. And however hard it is here, it's got to be harder somewhere else.
That's good that you feel that way. We're never letting you leave. Any of you. Any final thoughts, Sarah, Felix?
I was going to say, I'm happy, you know, I know there's 100 people on this call, but as we all were discussing, we really empathize with where you are. I don't know about where I started in the recession back in 2009. We actually had a rift. You know, people were not buying. So where you are, you know, whether it's 6 weeks, I think you said, was it Larry who just started, or Lance, I think it was you 6 weeks ago. It's tough. I think the long term here is great if you cut your teeth in an environment like this. You're going to have to get gritty. You're going to have to fake it till you make it. I'm going back to making calls, and if anyone knows me, I hate cold calling. I hate canvassing more, but I hate cold calling, and I'm doing it. So if you want to know how I do a cadence, you know, reach out to me. It's real easy. I'm happy to help. It's nothing amazing. It is not a silver bullet, but you don't have to recreate the wheel. Just don't talk about me to other people in the company about how marginally simple it is in terms of my messaging. Not groundbreaking, but you know, I think Sarah and all of the leadership really understands that it is difficult. It is even difficult for, you know, veterans like Laura, Felix, and I. So any way we can help, I genuinely mean that. Let me know, and I'm happy to share all of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. All right, Felix, you paused. Now you have to be the
Bring
final.
it home, Felix. Bring it home.
Don't let us down,
no,
man.
and just to echo Sarah's point and Laura's point, I know it's tough. It's not easy. I think the best thing we can do as BPAs, and we get it. You know, we have the same pressures to set DCs and get BPs and close deals, but be genuine, be authentic when you're talking on the phone. Crack a joke. You know, even in DCs, I tell my prospects, and feel free to interrupt me. I have 2 older sisters, so I've been interrupted my whole life. So don't worry about hurting my feelings. And I'm Puerto Rican on top of that, so I've been insulted, and it's part of our culture. So no worries, but give a little piece of yourself. I often say stay away from talk traps, not so much talk tracks. Don't lead a witness. Be authentic, be open, listen. Don't have an answer before they even say anything, because they pick up on it, and they know when they're getting sold. And yes, we're trying to sell them, but we're also trying to help them. And I think that's a huge takeaway that we lose in this process, like sell. No, we're also trying to help. And if they say no, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. They're completely within their right to say, I'm not interested. Move on to the next one. You're going to find one that's going to be a great fit, and they're going to be a client for life. So be positive, keep trudging forward. 2020 is rough for everybody. But that's all we can do now. And you're in the best place to do it.
Awesome. Well, with that, I wholeheartedly agree. I want to thank our panel, obviously, for being so open and giving with their time and knowledge and information. So Sarah, Felix, Laura, thank you so much for giving back to our Western region community here. I want to thank those of you that listened in. I hope you picked up some nuggets, but the training does not start and end with this. Your DM is a phenomenal resource for you. The folks on this panel and other senior people in the region, I can tell you without fail, are here to help you. Your regional managers, even myself, we are all here and invested in your success. And so thank you again for your participation. And until next time, have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.